Welcome to the Wealth Wisdom, where money has history and knowledge becomes power.
Before kings printed coins, before central banks wrote laws, and long before the dollar, the pound, or the rupee existed, money was something entirely different. It wasn't controlled. It wasn't issued. It wasn't regulated. Money was a language, a shared understanding, a silent handshake between people who trusted one another. But that history has been quietly erased. Because today, when we think of money, our minds jump to governments, banks, credit scores, interest rates, inflation charts, gold reserves, and national currencies. We assume that money has always needed authority, that without a government or a bank, money couldn't exist. But what if that assumption is completely wrong? What if money existed long before the first king minted a coin? What if value itself was once organic, decentralized, and human? What if society once operated without banks, without taxes, without financial surveillance? This is the forgotten story of what money was, before it became a tool of power. And the ending of this story affects every one of us alive today. The world before money had rules. Let's go back thousands of years, long before countries, kings, or formal law. Imagine a tightly knit village. Everyone knows everyone. People live close. They share the same daily struggles. Weather, harvest, life, death. You grow wheat. Your neighbor hunts deer. Someone else makes pottery. Someone gathers herbs and fruit. There is no currency. Yet, every day, value moves. So, how do people trade? Trade based on trust. If you needed meat, you didn't buy it, you exchanged. I'll give you wheat today, and when winter comes, you'll return the favor. This wasn't written on paper. There was no contract. There was no interest, no late fee. The entire economy ran on memory and honor. Anthropologists call this a gift economy. Not gifts as charity, but gifts as relationships. Your wealth wasn't measured in how much you possessed. Your wealth was measured in how much the community trusted you. If you betrayed that trust, you didn't go bankrupt. You were socially exiled. And in a small community, exile wasn't just shame, it was survival threatening. So originally, money was not gold or numbers or paper. Money was trust stored over time. Trade expands, trust breaks down. But as villages grew into towns and towns connected into trade networks, one problem appeared. You couldn't remember what a stranger owed you. Trust couldn't scale. So humanity needed a token, something recognizable, durable, and widely accepted. Not because it was precious, but because people agreed on it. Different cultures chose different things. Cowrie shells in Africa and Asia, salt blocks in Rome. That's where the word salary comes from. Tea bricks across Central Asia beads, feathers, bronze rings, whale teeth, obsidian stones. Money didn't begin with kings. Money didn't begin with banks. Money emerged naturally because people needed a way to store trust across distance and time. No ruler created it. Human cooperation created money. The rise of merchant economies. Over time, trade routes connected entire civilizations, from the Nile to Mesopotamia, from the Indus Valley to ancient China. Merchants became the first true economists. They didn't rely on one currency. They constantly negotiated the value of things. How much salt equals one sheep? How much grain equals one bronze tool? Value was alive, flexible, changing from place to place. No government controlled it. The market defined value, not the state. This is the opposite of how money works today. Then power entered the story. As cities expanded and wealth pooled, something inevitable happened. Someone wanted control over the flow of value. Enter the kings. Kings didn't create money. They took it over. They realized something powerful. If you control exchange, you control the economy. And if you control the economy, you control the people. The first government coup. Over money. Around 600 BCE in ancient Lydia, modern-day Turkey, a ruler named King Alyats began stamping gold nuggets with his royal seal. Gold already had value. People already used metal in trade. So why the stamp? Because the stamp declared authority over value. The message was clear. This gold holds value because I say so. It was no longer a symbol of trust. It was now a symbol of power. Once rulers controlled coins, they could pay soldiers, buy loyalty fund wars, and, most importantly, collect taxes. Coins weren't invented to make trade easier. Coins were invented to finance armies. Money became political. How kings forced people to use their currency. Then rulers made their smartest move. They declared that taxes could only be paid using the king's coins. This forced everyone, even people who didn't want the currency, to participate in the system. You could trade anything privately, but if you wanted to stay safe, avoid jail, avoid punishment, you needed the king's money. Money was no longer a shared agreement. Money became obedience, the collapse of trust, and the birth of inflation. For centuries, coins were backed by actual precious metals, gold, silver, copper. But power always wants more. Wars grew, empires expanded, rulers became greedy. They discovered a trick: melt the coins, reduce the gold content, stamp the same royal seal. People would never know, at least not at first. This was the first inflation, not caused by markets, not caused by shortages. Inflation began as government fraud, and history repeated this pattern endlessly. Rome debased its coins. Rome collapsed. China printed paper money. Hyperinflation destroyed dynasties. The Ottoman currency fell, the empire broke apart. Medieval Europe repeated the cycle. The formula never changes. Authority captures money. Authority expands supply. Trust collapses. The system resets. And now. We are living the modern version. Governments no longer dilute metal. They print digital currency or expand credit or monetize debt. Money is no longer tied to gold or silver or anything real. Money is now a political decision, and the scale, unimaginable. In the United States, 80% of all dollars in existence were created in just the last 20 years. Not earned, not produced, just created. What happens? Prices rise, wages stagnate, wealth inequality explodes, debt becomes endless. It is the exact same pattern ancient civilizations faced before collapse. The forgotten truth: money did not begin in governments. Money did not begin in banks. Money began with people, with trust, with human relationships. The tragedy is not that governments control money today. The tragedy is that most people don't remember that money once belonged to us. 3 key takeaways. 1. Money is a social agreement, not a government invention. Human beings traded and cooperated long before states existed. 2. Power centralized money to control armies, taxes, and populations. Currency shifted from cooperation to coercion. 3. Every empire that manipulates money eventually collapses. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes loudly. A final warning. Right now, the world is entering a phase where the trust layer of money is breaking again. People are questioning value. Currencies are unstable. Debt is unsustainable. And new forms of money are rising. Digital, decentralized, borderless. The next era of money will not be decided by governments. It will be decided, once again, by people. The question is, will we remember what money once was? Or will we repeat the same cycle? If this changed how you see money, share it, because when history is forgotten, history repeats. And we may be closer to a repeat than we realize. Like, subscribe, and stay with us, because the story of money is far from over.